Okay, well, welcome to another episode of Kahua Kai, The Journey. And I've got a guest that I got introduced to secondhand because I've never met my guest person to person before today. But Matt put an article out. I guess you were featured in some publication, but we'll cover all that. So right off the bat, my guest today is
Aloha, everyone, and mahalo, Kermit, for having me here to be able to just share part of my story as Kanaka Maoli, as a native Hawaiian. My name is Malia Chow, and I currently reside in Butler, Wisconsin, which is a small town just inside of Greater Milwaukee. And uh, and yeah, so thanks for having me.
You bet. Now, start off at the very beginning. Where were you born?
Sure. I was born at Tripler Hospital, just outside the Honolulu International Airport in 1981. So I'm
Okay.
I'm alongside my twin sister in 81, and my father is from Makaha. He was born at Queens. His mother is pure Hawaiian. She was born in Maui from a place called Kahakuloa.
Awesome. Awesome. So, born at Tripler, how long did you live in Hawaii before any kind of move?
I was little. I don't remember the move, but it was before I was in kindergarten. I think it was well before I was in kindergarten. So, my mom was stationed in the Air Force in Honolulu. Um, and that's where she met my dad. My dad, again, he was Native Hawaiian from Makaha. My mom, 6 foot tall, blonde hair, blue eyed German French woman from Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, which is very close to where I reside right now. Um, and when we were born, again in 81, my twin sister and I, it was just prior to that my mother's two brothers passed away at two completely unrelated incidences. And so my grandma out here, my holy grandma in Menominee Falls, thought that when my mom was pregnant with twins, that it was like a message for her, like a gift, since she lost her two sons. So when we were newborns, toddlers, I'm not exactly sure. That's when we came out here.
Okay. Now, right off the bat, what I pick up as being a little bit curious is your mom being blonde haired, blue eyed, getting herself to Waianae of all places, very unusual, especially back in the early 80s.
Yes. In fact, she was there in the 70s. Yes, very, very unusual. She went to beauty school out there after she was done with the Air Force. I have a brother and sister from my mom's first marriage. They're Haole, but they grew up in Hawaii, and then I'm Kanaka Maoli, and I grew up on the mainland. But yeah, and I remember because, like I said, my tutu was pure Hawaiian. When that happened, she walked down the street holding my mom's hand and said, "Hey, everybody, this my daughter," and she was telling everyone, this is my ohana, so that everyone knew. But my brother and sister growing up in Waianae, being blonde and blue, it was very hard for them. Mhm.
Wow. Yeah. But
Mhm.
these are the kinds of things that I enjoy when I started doing the series. I mean, it's amazing because everybody's journey is different, and you got stuff in the story that kind of like just such a wow factor to it. So you came up to Wisconsin kind of to be closer to grandma. Tell me about the first your first trip back to Hawaii after that.
Yeah. Oh, Kermit, thanks for asking. I love these questions because I think it's really unique as someone who grows up like biracially, bi-coastally, or we're by the lake here. And then my first experience that I remember, other than like being on the beach, I remember being like a small kind, like 2, 3 years old, and being on the beach. But when I really remember where I have like a cognitive semblance of being there, um, I was about 9 years old. And my dad took my twin sister and I to be out there and to see his ohana in Makaha. And Kermit, are you familiar with that area at all? Are you
Yeah,
are
I
you
lived in Waianae from 96 to '07,
Oh,
and my
okay.
dad has been in the general Nanakuli Waianae area since I want to say 69 or 70. So
Oh,
I
okay.
make
So
lots of
that's your
trips
route.
out there. I never really lived out there till '96, but I mean,
Oh,
every weekend, 3 times a month, just I was out there a lot. So
so you're really that is awesome. So you're really familiar then maybe with like past Makaha Beach. There's this what my family called was Yokohama, which
yeah,
was that's where all my ancestors Evie are scattered, all the ashes, there's just right around Makua and before Yokohama. That's what I remember is being there watching my dad and his brothers when my first visit on Oahu that I can actually remember was them spearfishing over there and cane pole fishing in the tide pools. And um and I remember the food because in Wisconsin we always grew up eating like local style food but never really having availability to like poke or anything like that, and then going there and eating all those foods and loving it and just feeling like I belonged. Because out here, I grew up in a very suburban white community, and it was not always kind to us. It was even in the 80s it wasn't a kind place in a lot of ways, being like some of the only like brown skinned people. And so I remember when I was there and I would look around and I'm like, oh, these people eat like we do and they look like we do, and I just felt like I really belonged, and I remember that at about 9 years old.
that's awesome. Now, I remember my first real experience going off to college, Pacific Northwest in Oregon. When we got to the campus, there was about 7 or 8 of us from Hawaii that first year. And I remember feeling the cultural separations between the different nationalities on campus. But it seemed like the Hawaii people were so unique because no one really knew much about them. They understood Black, they understood Hispanic, American Indian, but these Polynesian Pacific Islanders is like, okay, where do we put them? So we kind of bridged the gap when we got there. It seemed to me like, because we, get together, throw a little party, and everybody was invited. We didn't care. And so they were like walking in, going, "This is strange. We're intermingling. What is that all about?" But after a while, it was like then it just opened their minds and hearts a little bit. So when you went back at 9, having been raised on the mainland,
Mhm.
did you have any language comprehension challenges when you got to Hawaii?
No, I never did. I actually grew up speaking pidgin until I started going to grade school. So I
Oh,
remember
okay.
because my dad, he's growing up in Makaha, that's all he could speak, right, was pidgin, and it was thick. So I remember when I started going to grade school that I spoke pidgin, and then I was realizing, like, oh, like I just even remember being in kindergarten, because I slept on futon, right? So I didn't even sleep on a bed until I was like 11. You know what I mean? Like we slept on the floor. Like we didn't have cribs either. We slept on sheepskin. We had a very Hawaiian style household, and in everything that we ate and everything that we did and the way we were taught. So no, I like for me, no, I fully yeah, it's not a barrier for me, but I've noticed for my son, like when I try to speak Olelo to him or I try and speak even pidgin to him, he doesn't he's kind of resistant to it, and I think it's because he doesn't want to feel different than his peers, you know. Um, and he also doesn't like attention on him, so he wants to fit in as much as possible.
Okay.
So that's kind of been a challenge that I've noticed. And I remember being a kid and like wishing that my name was not Malia Chow. You know, I remember um, being a kid and wishing my hair wasn't wavy and thick. I remember being and you know, Hawaiians, like we're thicker, you know, generally speaking. And I remember being like, oh, why can't I be dainty and little, and why can't I have blue eyes? And you know, just because I didn't want to be different than anybody else. And it took I think, you know, maturing and growing up, and because I've always had pride for my culture. It wasn't that, it was just not wanting to be the odd one out.
That's understandable. I mean, elementary school age, that's fitting in is like critical, you know.
Mhm.
So I guess I didn't confirm it, but so when you guys made the move up as infant slash toddlers to Wisconsin, Dad came too.
Dad came too. Yep.
Okay. Was
He
that
and my
kind
mom were
of
together, yep, until
was
his
that
last day.
kind of his first trip to the mainland?
So my dad was born in 46 at Queens. And so it's interesting too, because when you put it into perspective for a lot of the mainlanders out here, it's like Hawaii was not even a state yet at that point, right? It was a territory. And he actually did, he was always a musician, but he did eventually go into the army.
Oh, okay.
And so when it wasn't until he was about in his 30s that he actually left Hawaii. And that's when he first saw snow during boot camp. Um, but I will say that I think for, and maybe Kermit, you might speak on this too, like for him to be on the mainland, that was exotic and that was beautiful and that was something else. And I'm sure the cost of living out here was probably very attractive to him, you know. And I think that when he came out here, I know he was really homesick because he could always see, he said he could always see the ocean no matter where he was when he was at home. And then here, all he could see was farms and cornfields. And I know he was really homesick for the food and very homesick for the, I think just the way that families treat each other out there is different, right? The culture and social interactions are different. But I do know that he did love it out here. And he passed away unexpectedly in 2007, about a couple months. I think it was literally just a couple months before he was to retire. And he was looking for land. He wanted to go to Kalapana on Big Island. That's where he wanted to go. He didn't want to go back to Waianae. Um, I'm not sure why. I think he just wanted more he wanted it even more country. He wanted even more green. And so that was his dream to go back at that point. Prior to that, he really didn't. I know he missed a lot, but he seemed solid here. Like he knew that it was a better opportunity here for all of us.
Just curious, what kind of career was he in for most of the time that he was up there?
So in Wisconsin here, he was a laborer. He was a die caster. So he was doing casting for liquid metal. Extremely hard worker, very, very humble man. He would work 6 nights a week, usually 5 to 6 nights a week. He would start at like 11 p.m. and then get home around 7 a.m. And he always had like burns, liquid metal burns on his t-shirts and scars all over his hands because he said when you pour the metal, it splashes, but it will always splash through no matter what protection you have. So, and then on the weekends, he would oftentimes, because we gigged all weekend, he's a Hawaiian musician, and myself and my hula sisters, my mom was our bookie and our manager, and we gigged all over the country, about 150 gigs a year for about 20. He passed, I think, 23 years into it, 20 years maybe into our performance. So if he wasn't working, you know, third shift, he was playing music all the time.
And this time period, with all your family gigging, passed through your high school years.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
did
started
that give
dancing.
you?
Sorry, go ahead, Kermit.
Did that give you any special notoriety in high school?
Um, I think I tried to keep it private now because at that time social media wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
So when I was in class or if I was like in school, I didn't talk about it. But it was a really like we danced hula very very intensely our whole lives. Um and like we never did sports or anything like that. It was just like you hula, that's what you do. So it was like our life way. But yeah, at school I was kind of quiet. So I just didn't tell anybody. But we started dancing professionally, I think when I was like I think we started training professionally when I was 14, like for professional training. Then we were 15 or 16 is when we started dancing professionally.
Wow.
Mhm.
And where does your sister live?
My twin sister?
Yeah.
So my twin sister, so we were born in 81 and when I lived in Honolulu cuz I moved back to Honolulu. We would always go back all the time, but like I went back there for college to live in my 20s. And so I spent the majority of my 20s. I went to the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I went to Kapiolani Community College. And I was out there gigging too in Hawaii. I was gigging as a musician and as a dancer. And she moved to Las Vegas and so she was out there and honestly to be quite forward about it, she actually became sex trafficked and then she was murdered in 2004 in Las
Oh,
Vegas. She tried to leave the situation, and in 2004, at the end of June, she was murdered when she tried to leave. So yeah, Kermit, and that was a long time ago, and that's what I do for my day job. I work for the Her Wellness Institute, which stands for Healing Intergenerational Roots. And we basically help survivors of sex trafficking, domestic violence, particularly Indigenous women, Native and underserved communities. And the majority of our funding comes through the Department of Justice. And so that's how I found my daytime career is to help women who are in situations like my twin sister. And actually, the Her Wellness Institute was founded by a Native Hawaiian woman out here by name of Leah Denny.
wow.
Mhm.
Yeah, and not being in it, but just hearing through media and news reports. I used to be kind of overly protective with my daughters, but with my granddaughters, man, I'm a maniac.
Mhm.
I mean, because they're using dating apps and stuff, and I mean, you're meeting people that I don't know.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I mean, they shake their heads and they giggle and go, "Grandpa, take a pill." And going, I read too much, man. I mean, if you
Yeah.
give me a chance, I'll DNA check these guys before they pick up my granddaughters. But I imagine there's so much satisfaction and fulfillment in what you do.
There is. So there is, unfortunately, for Indigenous women who are native to whatever land, like out here, it's in Wisconsin. There's I believe 12 or 13 federally recognized tribes here. And then also like the native Hawaiians, the Kanaka, I remember thinking that we were different. I mean, we are different than, like the natives here, but it's kind of the same thing. We're people who are living off the land and, and then they were colonized. And so I found that the day job that I'm doing, being surrounded, because there's not a lot of Native Hawaiians here, there are some, but there's not a lot, that I have really gravitated towards the Native folks out here. And there really is an epidemic, unfortunately, for Indigenous women who do end up becoming trafficked because I think of it tribally, a lot of the reason is because of the laws between the feds and the tribe. um, there's a lot of leeway, unfortunately, for women to be victimized that way. but also Kermit, like how you were saying, when you were in school in was it Portland?
Yeah,
You
Oregon. Yeah.
people like don't know, yeah, people don't know how to take us, right? There, so it's like there's some sort of exoticism. I think that's always that allure, right? The way we can sometimes be like hypersexualized, like the coconut bras and things, people don't see it the same way as us.
Yeah.
Or, like even when you think about the way that like the American soldiers or the military people, they were probably used hula dancers as a way to attract people to enroll in the military around the Pearl Harbor times, and just that allure. So I think that like as like indigenous people, we oftentimes we get exoticized and objectified in a way that makes it dangerous for us. Not to mention that the United States government has not always been our friend historically, right? And in many ways it is or isn't. I won't get into that politically. That's not what this interview is about. But I think just saying that it's that type of treatment historically can continue on, and it can look a lot like things like sex trafficking and not having places to be seen or helped. So I'll
Yeah.
leave it at that. I won't get too deep into that, but thank you for let me speak on that.
Oh, sure. Because to me, it's interesting, but in your case, it's personalized. So for me, it's kind of really firsthand. It helps me feel it a little bit better. So,
Mhm.
um, well, it caught my attention earlier. You mentioned a son. You have other children, or
Nope, I have one.
all right? What's his
Um,
name?
his name is Kaimana Keahi, and his last name is Tianen, which is European. But of course, Kaimana Keahi is his Inoa, and chosen by me, based on dreaming about the ocean a lot. And so Kaimana, of course, means like that. Mana is like that energy, right? And Kai is like the sea. So it's kind of like the great force of the ocean, or the energy of the ocean or the sea. And then Kiahi means like the fire, right? So Kaimana Kiahi means like it was a balance for me, because it's the fire and it's the sea. And also his grandfather on his Haole side uh, was a music journalist here in for the Milwaukee Journal for about 35 years, and his nickname was Diamond Dave. And so Kaimana can also mean diamond, right? So we named him after his grandfather as well.
Ah, okay, okay. And has Kaimana been to Hawaii, I imagine?
Hmm.
Okay.
Many times.
Does
Hmm.
he have fun while he's there?
He loves it.
Okay.
That
Because you
boy.
mentioned
So
being a little bit,
yeah,
when he's in Wisconsin, a little bit reserved about it, but when he's in the culture, he soaks it up and
yeah, yeah.
awesome.
So it's interesting because like when you grow up in two different places, well, at least my experience, I can't speak for anyone else, was like when I was in Wisconsin growing up and felt like I didn't fit in, I would always go to Hawaii. And when I moved to Hawaii in my 20s, I was like, oh, I'm going to go out there and they're all going to love me and accept me because I look like them and I am. But I go out there and that acceptance is there until I open my mouth. Right. And they're like, oh, there's something about her, and then so not fully fitting in there. And even the mindset, right? Because I grew up in a very like Anglo-Saxon, white suburban place, going out there feeling the disconnect, but then coming out here and also feeling that disconnect. Sometimes it's like I can walk both worlds, but I never quite fully belong in either one of them. It's kind of like I have my foot in each place. Kaimana, he pulled on the holy side, so he looks, you can see it in his eyes, and he's got like my dad's hands, and really you can see it in his eyes, and he doesn't burn, he gets that color, but he can very much pull haole. And he'll be 14 in a couple of weeks, or no, sorry, he just turned 14 a couple of weeks ago. And he's about 6'3" and size 13 shoe, and he's long and skinny, just all arms and legs. And he's got like a curly head of lightish brown hair and really light brown eyes. They're almost gray. So he's very beautiful. When he goes to Hawaii and gets the tan and puts on the board shorts, he looks like a Hapa Island kid. But out here in the winter, he looks like one howly kid. So, but he eats full on Hawaiian. Like he eats full on Hawaiian food. He's a total foodie and he loves food.
Okay, so poi and poke, they're on his list.
Oh yeah, sushi, sashimi, all that, all that.
So as far as I know, I live about 2.5 hours south of Minneapolis. And since our town is so small, there's not a lot of diversity here. There's nobody else from Hawaii, and I think there's only two black families in this town of
Mhm.
10,500. So when I want to get ingredients, for example, I gotta make the trip up to Minneapolis to go get achiote and all these different this and that to go get. And then we have a big Asian market, huge Asian market, and the guy through his father has Hawaii ties, so he brings in products. He brings in poi and lau lau and Portuguese sausage. What's access like for you as far as those kinds of things to keep the menu going at your house?
Yeah. So in the 80s, it was very limited. I don't know if you have heard of the Hmong people before. The Hmongs,
There's some in Minneapolis, yeah.
there is okay, and in Milwaukee, in their rural and urban areas, there are concentrations of Hmong people. So we always went to the Hmong stores, little Asian stores, usually in the inner city. I remember driving there with my dad and just loving to see all the things that I remember while being in Hawaii. And then, but now, we're talking like that was in the early 80s. Now we're talking about mid 2020s, and there's a lot of access to Oriental food, local food. We have a Hawaiian restaurant and marketplace here in Wauwatosa, which is like a 10-minute drive from where I live and 10 minutes from where my cultural arts center is. They've really helped to not revive, but I guess like bring in the Hawaiian culture here through food. They have frozen food. They have the lau lau, the manapua, the kona coffee, the saimin, the musubi, and then they have hot plate lunch too. So you can go in there and you can grab your crack seed. You can go grab your mochi popcorn.
Is that
You can grab your fukake.
is that by chance Onokain Grinds?
Yes.
Guy
Yep.
and David? Okay. We
Yeah.
went there, was that must have been in 20, spring of 20. My wife and I just drove out, because I stay pretty close to Matt, who kind of facilitates the Frozen Ohana network. And so when we found out about Guy and David's place, we took a ride out there. So that's not too far from where you are then.
No, not at all. It's very, very close. In fact, my sister, she bakes. So my sister, who I was saying, my half sister, I love her like a whole sister, right? But her name is Amber Peranto, and she has a culinary degree from the East Coast at a very prestigious culinary school. And she does all the cakes and things like that for Onokain Grinds. So she's Haole, but grew up in Hawaii and then went to school on the East Coast, and now she does all their pastries and the Cocoa Puffs and all that.
Oh wow. That's that's a dangerous person to have in your life.
I'm telling you, I'm telling you, Uncle, it's great.
It's-
Like I have Cocoa Puffs and chantilly cake, easy access anytime.
this is a secret I still keep from my wife, but when I'd be in town, I'd stop at Lidiha Bakery and she'd call me up, bring home a dozen Cocoa Puffs. I'd buy a dozen and a half because the drive to Waianae was just enough time for me to finish that six and then still show up with the dozen she asked for. So, and
Do you like
I seem like a saint because oh no, you guys go ahead and eat. I won't eat any yet. It's like I already had six. So that
I
was
love that.
yeah. They were dangerous. If I lived somewhere with easy access to Cocoa Puffs,
And their butter mochi too. Lilia's butter
oh,
mochi is I love it. But they have the matcha Cocoa Puff now. I love that one. Mm.
Huh.
Hmm.
It's it's amazing how it seems like year by year the concentration, maybe I guess, of Pacific Islanders gets a little bit larger and a little bit larger. Because I
Hmm.
mean, I helped Matt with some of the membership on the Frozen Ohana, and I mean, we're probably getting,
Thousands.
well, 5 or 6 a week asking for
Yeah.
membership right away, and we're just a matter of keeping up, really. So, but I like it, and I don't know if you spend a lot of time on the site, but Matt's trying to compile a location map
Wow.
of where people are and where all the Pacific Island businesses are too. So I'm
Awesome.
trying to feature some of them on the series also, because one that really has me curious is I can't think of the name except it has the word Himalayan in it. But I guess they serve local food, and I'm really curious what the Himalayan bullshit
Oh,
is.
yeah, I kind of recall that a little bit too. I don't remember the names or anything, but I recall that as well. Yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be a story there somewhere. So
Yeah. Uncle, I wanted to shout out to Matt too because I've never met Matt in person, but I see so much what he does on social media to keep us Hawaiians and Islanders here, like to feel like we still have our presence and our identity, because being so far away from the Aina, I think, we crave it more. We're hungry for it, and he's connected all of us so much. And I just wanted to say that out loud, is that a big mahalo to Matt Kamara for doing what he does, and for you doing what you do, because even like I was saying with that identity, it's like, how are you Hawaiian on the mainland? How are you Hawaiian on the West Coast? How do you stay connected in that way? And he's definitely one of those people, and so are you. So thank you.
and talk about it being a small world. Matt's mom and I were classmates in high school. So that was like, oh, because I contacted Matt first, and you obviously get to talking, and Hawaiian style. One of the first questions is, "Oh, well, what year you grad and what school you went?" And that's like, from there it just went, "Oh, hey, you must know my mom." I said, "Yeah, I do."
Of course, right?
Yeah. So I mean, um, it seems like, well, with social media and the internet too, the world gets smaller. I mean, heck, a decade and a half ago, I would have had to probably go to Wisconsin to sit and talk to you and get this to happen. So, you
Yeah,
know, I like that flexibility a lot, because then now I have more access to reach and hear stories about this and that. If you
absolutely.
if you had, let's say, if you genie popped out of a lamp and
Mm.
gave you the opportunity to live without pressure or problems in Hawaii or in Wisconsin, what would your choice be?
Oh man, I just had this conversation with a Hawaiian family that we did their luau for their son Kainoa's graduation this last weekend, and we were talking about that very thing. And I guess if I had a genie, I would say, "Can you take away the traffic? Can you take away the housing costs?" Okay, I'm there. Um, but I I went to Oahu at the end of or at the end of January. I was just there a few months ago. And even in the last 20 years, and I'm sure Uncle, you probably noticed this too, it is so different out there. Even environmentally, um, and the cost always has been exorbitant. So I think for me, that hasn't been like a huge part of it. Um, the traffic. When I went to Waianae, I remember thinking, because we went to Polkai Bay, and I told my son, I said, "Son, when we're driving along the coast, you're probably going to see a lot of homeless people. And I want you to be prepared just because he's very sensitive. And I know he's immediately going to be like, oh no, like he's going to feel bad. So I was saying, you're going to see a lot of homeless people. And we drive along the coast and they weren't there. They pushed them. They must have pushed them out, or they're somewhere. They didn't just disappear. So
Yeah, well, I know they've really done a lot of work with establishing more structure in their lives. I was reading an article, and I remember that lady actually being there in 06, 07 before I moved up to the mainland, but she's really created these communities where, I mean, it's like an HOA,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, lights out,
yes,
kids are studying,
yeah,
no rubbish, and I see now where a lot of places are incorporating the little buildings, they'll,
yes,
I don't know,
yeah.
maybe 900 something square feet or
The
whatever.
tiny homes or the micro
Yeah,
homes or whatever.
and
Yeah,
they're
that's
they're
awesome.
setting up a bunch of those because I know a bunch of property was not really donated, but made very affordable and accessible up in Waianae Valley, and they've got a community started up there. So they're trying to address it best way they can. I mean, you can't solve it
Yeah,
until you, like you say, somehow magically make the houses an affordable price.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
not going to happen. So
yeah. That's a deep structural, issues that. So I warned my son. I said, you might see a lot of homeless people, and then we went and they were gone. So it's good to hear where they went. But then we went to Pokai Bay, and Pokai Bay is where whenever I was in Hawaii, that's where I was. That's where my grandma was. My tutu was like right there. That's where my family all grew up. So I was used to, seeing the things like there's a lot of addiction there, and there's a lot of things there, right? And so I warned my son. I said, you're gonna probably see a lot of homeless people. You might see drugs, things like that. And we get to Pokai Bay, and it was all tourists. And I was like, what? I was like, why? It's starting to look gentrified. And then even we went to Makua Cave, and there was like a bunch of like tourists in there, a lot of tourists in there. And it was just strange. And I thought, with the traffic and everything, and I think with social media, all the hiking spots that you used to be able to go to for peace and just to be alone or just connect with your aumakua, or to just be there with akua or whatever, just be on the aina. it, I felt like, at least for me in my personal experience on Oahu, it felt like those places are even smaller than they were before. And I'm sure that's from YouTube, and I'm sure that's from
you have to
Facebook.
share
And
them more with the world now.
yeah. And I thought, you know what? I said, next, if I ever go back, I love Oahu. I love it so much. Like, I feel so at home there. But I think I might choose a different island if I ever were to go back. And I probably would choose Hawaii Island. I probably would go to the Big Island.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because I remember this is, like I said, pre-07, but we were living in Waianae, and when I'd have to come into town for work early in the morning, I'd leave 6:30, 7 o'clock. I mean, technically it's only about maybe barely 32 miles, but there were days when it take me like an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, go 3 inches, stop and wait, go 3 more inches, stop and wait. And it was like, oh, craziness.
Kermit, do you think you would go, if would you do it if you could have a magic wand wave and you could end up back there, would you do it?
I don't think so. I think what I would make my wish for is like an endless plane ticket.
Hmm. Same,
Yeah,
same.
but on a day-to-day basis, and also I didn't realize I had it because I had no way to experience it. But once I came to the mainland, like for college initially, I mean, I discovered that I have an incredible amount of wanderlust.
Mhm.
I like to get in my vehicle and be able to take off. Last weekend for my birthday, I went down to Des Moines. That's 3 hours one way. They had a big Asian festival, and stayed overnight, came back the next day, and just for me, it's on Oahu, a 45-minute trip, man, you're packing a bag, we're going 45 minutes. Ooh, you know, you better take sandwiches in case something happens. But I remember when I came up for college, I was in Oregon and I was in Salem, and some Howley boys from Oregon offered to take three of us local guys to Portland, which is an hour,
Mhm.
you know. And when we heard that, we thought, okay, went back, packed overnight bags, and got to the vehicle. And the guys driving said, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "Well, we're going that far away, an hour. Obviously, stay overnight." He goes, "Oh, bro, we watch a movie, we're going to eat, we coming home." It's like, oh, 2 hours in the same day. We're like, and now it's like completely reversed. I'll make the why night to town trip 3, 4 times in a single day. And my dad, before he passed, he used to just shake his head, going, "How can you do that?" It's like, "Dad, I lived in Texas for a while, man. We'd make a once a week 10-hour drive. One,
Yeah. Hmm.
you just get indoctrinated in the other direction or whatever it is. But um, yeah, so yeah, so you mentioned your dad passes. Your mom still with us?
She is. Yep. Menominee Falls. She
How
lives
far is
very
that from
close
you?
to me. What's that?
Is that far away from where you live?
No, no, not at all. Not at all. It's so Ono's is 10 minutes one way, the Hawaiian restaurant. She's 10 minutes the other way. So no, she's close.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's nice though for your son to have access to that next generation, because in Hawaii I see it quite a bit, and in places where the Asian cultures are very dominant, I see it. But generally speaking, grandkids and grandparents don't get to share as much time as I think is important. I mean,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
they can answer questions mom and dad have long forgotten.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
I miss that about being in Hawaii and having that access. My mom passed in 2020. She was the last of her generation, so I've only got first cousins now. So somebody asked me about it, and I said, "Well, the appeal to go home for family is less now.
Hmm.
Aunties and uncles are gone, and you know the first cousins are all socially and digitally connected, so you
Hmm.
get together often, just not face to face. So it's uh it's kind of neat when I get up here and get to hang out with Matt, and we come up with ideas for things and get to feature this and that, and really keep, like you said, his efforts to keep that Pacific Islander community in touch, if
Hmm.
nothing else, just in touch. So it's really nice to get that to happen. So
Agreed.
yeah. So do you have to drive far to go to work?
No, I my day job is in downtown Milwaukee. If there's no traffic, it's 15 minutes. If there is traffic, it's 30 minutes. But I also live just a few blocks from my cultural arts center. So yeah,
Oh,
it's really close. Yeah.
awesome. Do you teach any hula or anything?
I do. I do. So in 1996 is when my dad was given Haleo Malo. Haleo Malo means House of Malo. John and Amy Malo, who were the have you ever seen Elvis's Blue Hawaii?
Yeah, not very recently, but
Yeah.
I have in
Yeah.
the past. Yeah.
So there's a scene in the movie where Elvis is in a tiki lounge and he's dancing with Miley, and there's a like a marimba player in the background. That's John Mallow. And then there's a hula dancer. She's wearing a blue metallic cellophane skirt. And that's Amy Mallow. She's one of the hula dancers. There's two hula dancers in that. And the way that we became professional dancers is that John and Amy Mallow were going to open up a tiki bar in not a bar, but because they're Mormon, but Branson, Missouri has like it's almost like a dry Vegas. And they were going to open up a tiki lounge there. And one of their investors was a Hawaiian woman from Wisconsin. Her name was Cookie. And so she was out here with them and they trained us. And then once they moved on, then they gifted my dad Haleo Malo. So that was in 1996. But I've been dancing hula since I was 4 under the direction of Anita Bradley. She's a haole woman out here. She's still teaching hula in her 80s, but she is a beautiful, beautiful dancer. And then my dad, as a Hawaiian musician, there would always be these seminars in Indiana and Chicago, hosted by a woman named Cheryl Bell. And they would hire my dad as a Hawaiian musician, as well as Pesi Malga from Chicago. He's a famous Samoan entertainer. He's now in Florida. But Pesi and my dad were best friends, so we had all these groups. And when the Kumuhula would come in for these seminars, Sunny Ching, Chinky Mohoy, Ellen Gay De La Rosa from Polynesian Cultural Center, Keith Y from Polynesian Cultural Center, Mark Kelly Malu, for those of you who don't know, he's the guy from the Disney movies, right? The Lilo and Stitch, and he's now on the West Coast. Yeah, Mark Malu, Kelly Rachel, just all of these kumu. Eva Lenitsu, I've been so fortunate to be able to learn from all of these different kumu from over the years. And then even Carolina Aloha Lee from Chicago, she just curated with the Chicago Field Museum for over the last 2.5 years. They
Didn't they
curated,
just have a big event last weekend?
yes, weekend before last. Yep.
Okay.
And then the only living kumu hula left in the Midwest that I'm aware of, who I have been studying under as of recent, is Tina Eggert. So she was under the direction of Bill Sharman, and so she actually has 2 unikis. But being out here, that we were not there were no halal out here really. It was a lot of performance groups, but just being connected in any which way I can. Eventually, then in 2017, I opened up my own cultural arts center. And previously to that, I was teaching at the Greendale Rec Department. And I was teaching ukulele, guitar, both group and private. And then I was teaching keiki hula, kids hula, and then all ages, and then adult hula. So after 2017, when I opened up my own Cultural Arts Center here in Butler, we went nonprofit. We're a federally recognized 501c3, which is Nahale Studios. That means many houses, because we teach a lot of different classes. At any given season, I always teach halal, like, so as traditional as I can. On Wednesday nights, I teach Gracious Ladies and Gentlemen's Hula, which starts on tonight is actually our first week of the sessions. We have Ori Tahiti, which is Tahitian dancing, on Tuesday nights, and that is our competitive Tahitian dancers. One of my dear hula sisters, her name is Jessica Gonzalez, and she teaches Ori Tahiti on Tuesdays. And then she is an award-winning Tahitian dancer. She was just in Tahiti and placed a couple months ago. And then her other cohort in teaching is Sarah Padrones, who is another competitive Tahitian dancer. She's from the West Coast, the Bay Area in San Francisco. I also have a Tahitian drumming class. So we teach Tahitian drumming. I teach the sessions on Tuesday nights just before Ori Tahiti, but now Brian Kaleo Lee, who is Lonnie Lee's brother, he'll be teaching this session. So tomorrow he'll be teaching the Tahitian drumming for the next session. We do cultural workshops, whether it be poi ball, siva afi, that's fire dancing. We do protocol workshops. We do a lot. We do, like I said, we're still performing. COVID kind of switched it up a little bit. We're getting back into it, but we're averaging probably now between 50 to 100 gigs a year. Prior to COVID, it was about 150 or more every year.
Wow.
And then we're also, Nahale Studios is also the home of the Haleomala Dancers. So that's our professional group, and then that I own. And then Ocean Rush. So I'm the head person for Ocean Rush Music, which is, we're a six-piece band and we do traditional, contemporary, Hawaiian island, reggae, pop, rock, jazz, blues. We do it all. Yeah, there's a lot going
Now,
on.
now let me ask. I'm just guessing, but your week only has 7 days in it, right? Sounds like it should be 9, 10 days.
Last I checked, yeah, I'll be honest, like it's really hard. It's really hard, but when you love what you do, it's I do, there's things that I choose. My house isn't as clean as it could be. My laundry pile's a little bit bigger than maybe others. My bank account is a little bit smaller than others, perhaps, but I'm doing what I love and I'm doing what my purpose is.
Perfect. I mean, if you're happy and like they say, my house is clean enough to be healthy and dirty enough to be happy or something like along those lines. So now by
Yeah.
chance I want to ask, because I've gotten to meet this guy face to face out of Chicago. There's a Filipino fire knife guy, Jay Guevarola, I think you pronounce his last name. Have you met him by chance?
I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
think so. I hope to, but no, I don't think so.
Are you even familiar with the name or the personality or
I don't think so. We grew up with Uncle Pessy Malga, who was like legendary in the Chicago area, and then he retired and moved to Florida, and he was the Royal Hawaiian Polynesian Review.
okay.
I would love to meet more and be connected more with other groups, but that name I'm not familiar with, sadly.
Yeah. I'll send you links so you can at least see the stuff he's been posting. Very good talent. I mean, and he's never been to Hawaii. He just has Ohana ties, but he's Filipino, born in Chicago. Um, his only exposure has all been secondhand, whether it's through media or meeting people or whatever. But he's of the mindset that I like, where he goes for authenticity rather than just spin it because you're a new novel circus act or whatever. He
Yeah,
just really wants to get the meaning and the thrust behind everything he does, which is commendable. So
I would love to meet him.
yeah.
Our fire knife dancer is, we have a couple of them. We have a female fire poi dancer. She's my hula sister of almost 30 years. Her name is Zaira Paulos, and she does fire poi. And then Siva Afi for fire knife is my hula brother, Marshall Kali'i Kaluya. He's from Waipahu. His family's from there, and also Seattle. So they have a lot of roots in Seattle. But he learned from, I believe, Freddie Latuli. And when he learned with the blade. So he still dances with a blade. Because I know a lot of times they dull out the blade. No, he still does the blade. So
Well, that's motivation to make sure you do it well.
yeah. Mhm. He's also he's Filipino, Hawaiian, native, he's Samoan, he's a whole bunch of things, as we tend to be. But he actually also placed first for the Filipino martial arts, the Eskrima, international world champions in his age category. So he's been a first place in his age for a long time with Eskrima, and he's an Eskrima instructor out here as well.
Wow, that is,
Mhm.
yeah, and that's kind of lesser known. I mean, you ask 8 out of 10 people who are even in martial arts, really, if they even have heard of Eskrima, and a lot of them won't have heard of it. So, because
Yeah.
it's a lot like the Kahuna. I was born and raised on Molokai, and apparently that island was noted in history for having Kahuna that practiced, you know, martial arts and pretty deadly, from what I understand, if they got to it. So,
Hmm.
but like I say, they don't bring it up in school, and you don't see it on TV, and
Yeah.
So it's a matter of dipping in and I guess spreading the word, which I guess is what both of us sound like we're trying to do. So
Hmm.
educate the world. Living so close to Guy and David, then I don't know if you notice it, but when I make trips to Minneapolis and a larger city, Des Moines, in fact, there's a town an hour of us that just opened up. They call it the 507, which is the area code 507 Poke Place. But Matt has had to go in and speak to management groups because a lot of times they take such a fusion attitude with the poke that it's like you start seeing corn and watermelon and you're going, whoa, can we just rename this because it's
Yes.
not poke.
Yes. Totally. No, those are all over Wisconsin too. And that's why I stick with Ono's. OKG is the place to go for me, and or make it at home, but it's so expensive to make at home. And I always think it's interesting too when they spell poke with like a weird little like not an okina at the end, but it's like an apostrophe at the end, and I'm like,
Yeah, I've seen that
yeah,
too, and like, where did that come from? I guess
yeah,
maybe it's for readers to know where the
yeah,
emphasis of the word is, but do that by just saying it correctly, and let them pick it up that way instead of because it's got
right,
to change the word, and then you change the meaning, and
yeah.
it gets really wild. So
Those places are all over here. Yeah, they're all over. Hmm.
the, the things we have to put up. I know there's a you mentioned the Pacific Islander and Native American connection, and I have friends in the Pacific Northwest where it seems to be stronger, maybe because it's so close to the West Coast. But they talk about how everything gets Americanized, where there's pronunciation or the recipe gets changed. One of my favorite foods ever, which I grew up recognizing as Korean, is meat jun, which is just a
Yeah,
thin ribeye coated with the egg batter. Well, 50 some odd years into my life, I get to the mainland and learn that that's not a Korean dish, it's a Hawaiian Korean dish. So, I'm making a fool out of myself visiting all these mainland Korean places going, well, why aren't you, don't you have meat jun? And they're looking at me because we never heard of it before. So, so
that
every,
is so interesting to know. I didn't know that. That is awesome.
and what was it I discovered? Oh, the Filipino dish, the pork with the peas, the guisantes. That's
Yeah, love
another
it.
one that's like that too,
Oh,
because I've visited Filipino restaurants up here and
they
they
don't know Gisantes? Okay. Oh,
or they have a different name, but it's got different ingredients too. Because the one I'm used to is real simple. I mean, the peas and the pork and the sauce, and there's
yeah.
not much of anything else in there. But the Filipinos have something that the the P ratio is a lot lower, and it's got dried fish or something in it, and it's tasty, but different name and different touch. And somewhere in the past, somebody just went, "Yeah, we'll call this guisantes. It's Filipino." It's like, no, I don't think so.
I love that dish. I love Gisantes.
Oh yeah, there's so many things that just I get hungry for along the way, and so you know in fact, one of the first times I met Matt face to face, they were having these quarterly pop-ups up there. And for me, like I said, it's a 2.5 hour drive. And I'd run up, visit the pop-up, and then come back. So 5 hours of driving in one day. And he'd shake his head. And I said, well, I mean, it's important enough on my list where I'll do it. For me, it's one of those things that I'll do. Not everybody will, so everybody follows it the way they want to follow it. If somebody's fanatic at X, Y, or Z, I mean, they'll go the extra step, the extra mile. So,
Mhm.
because I look at your time investment into your efforts to educate people or entertain them or whatever and make the culture more known. And you mentioned it, it sounds like we touched on time consuming. I mean,
Mhm.
your weeks are full.
Yeah.
But I guess it keeps boredom away for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm burning the candle at both ends. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but it's what I know. It's how I've always known to that's been my lifestyle. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a lot.
Good, awesome. Well, it's been fantastic. Any kind of parting thoughts?
Um, yeah, I did want to do a shout out to Kumuhula Tina Eggert. She's in Northern Illinois. She is, at least to my knowledge, the only kumu that is in existence out here. She lost her um, kumuhula sister, her hula sister, another kumuhula by name of Lee Bell, who passed a couple of years ago too. Um, at least as far as I know, for the Uniki. There is Carolina Aloha Lee out here, who is amazing, amazing musician and Native Hawaiian talent in Chicago too. There's there's a group called the I think it's the Hokulea Academy of Polynesian Arts. They are doing wonderful things in Chicago. There's there's the Golden Hawaiians out here. That's Miss Anita Bradley, who is still teaching hula to the kupuna. There are the Miley Lay dancers who've, that's Marsha Lavac, Mary Crowder, and a whole bunch of other amazing people. There is Kanaka out here in Wisconsin, all over the state, all over the Midwest. And there's many names I'm sure I'm forgetting, but I just wanted to say for anyone out there who, if you are, speaking as a hula practitioner, if you're seeking hula, just know it's out there. And I encourage anyone to reach out to me if they're looking to find that connection of hula in the Midwest, who they can go to. There's also Chantel Taylor Schmidt in Michigan and a whole bunch of others. So I guess my final words to everybody who's out there is being Polynesian, being Hawaiian out here in the Midwest. I just want to thank you, Uncle, for giving us the opportunity to talk about these things, because I think it can weigh heavy on the hearts of Polynesian people being away from their home, or Polynesians who grow up here and they're like, they don't understand. They maybe have pride, and they're hungry to have knowledge about what it's like to be back home or what it means to be Polynesian. And for those of us who maybe struggle with that identity of like, who am I, or how do I become more connected, that I wanted to remind everyone that you are, if you are a Kanaka who is listening, or a Polynesian who is listening, you are inherently that. It's in your blood, it's in your koko, it's in your oiwi, it's in your bones. It's in your DNA. So remember, there's nothing more that you need to do to be Hawaiian or Polynesian, and that we all grow and we all evolve. And the reason that we're here, we shouldn't have shame. Our ancestors were travelers. That's how they came to Hawaii. And if they continue to travel on, for your children and your grandchildren who maybe grew up on the mainland, just to remind them of that, and to remind them that we are enough. No matter who we are and where we live on this planet, we will always be Polynesian. That's something that you cannot take away from us, even if they're diluting the bloodline, which happens, and that was intentional. That we can still continue to be who we are by living through aloha, by being humble, by honoring our kupuna, by honoring our elders, and always forgetting that that in the spirit of aloha, that we are unified people regardless of our nations, black, white, red, or yellow. that we all belong here together. And I believe that truly and genuinely that aloha spirit is something that will help save all the division that's taking place in this world. So I guess that would be my final say before we go.
And now I'm getting a little thought rolling around the back of my head with all those sources for training and learning. Maybe we ought to put together a directory of some kind. I'll stay,
Awesome.
I'll stay
Yep.
in touch with you on it.
Yep. And I want to say a big mahalo to you, to Matt, to all the Kanakas out there, to everybody, all the Frozen Ohana people, to all the folks who do this stuff out of just the love for their culture and the love for the connection of our people. And without all of us doing this together, it would not be as strong as it is now.
Right on, right on. Big mahalo to you. Safety and blessings, and somewhere in the future we'll get to meet someday, hopefully. Ahui ho.
I hope so too. Ahui akuno, uncle. Good to meet you, Kermit. Take care and aloha.
Aloha.